Modernization really exposes these inconsistencies and often tends to break stuff too if it's not addressed, and some things just aren't compatible anymore. So success requires getting everyone onto the same standard baseline before you can take advantage of these new capabilities. So in reality, it's just that age old mantra of, well, we've always done it this way and we've never re examined it and we've never changed it. How many things in your actual day to day life do you treat that way, right?
I'm Chris Engler with Engler IT. You're listening to the Cyber Brisket Podcast. I specialize in IT and cybersecurity with over 25 years of experience and a team at the forefront of innovation. Our guests let us know what's hot in IT and how to keep your business from getting cooked. I went over the questions here and I remember something about your past, and I'm like, okay, I want to talk about because I remember you spent some time with Microsoft.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm always kind of like, whenever I'm sitting in front of a client or a prospect, I'm like, yeah, our Microsoft 365 guys, like the guy who runs the team, he used to work for Microsoft. So he like, were you involved with Intune?
Not specifically working on the team. So I actually, let me answer this as we're recording it. So a little bit about my backstory. When I was with Microsoft, my primary responsibility was what's called a community development specialist and business account manager. So I would be tasked with going out to communities throughout New England and helping them adopt Microsoft 365 technologies. Back then it was called Office 365, but it led into what today's Microsoft 365 is. A huge component of that was Intune and device management. So for several years, I went around to different organizations and helped them transition from a local on-premise first operation into the early days of what has eventually become Intune, to really do all those cloud-managed devices across Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. So while I didn't work on the Intune team, I had a direct line of sight and connection into the Intune team, and I was the guy out there helping everyone actually get onto Intune and shift their device management strategies upward. So you can call me like the frontline Intune guy.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, you are still our frontline Microsoft guy because you do still have ties inside of Microsoft, and you're always advocating for us and our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So every piece of feedback, everything that comes up in the MSP space, a lot of that has been shaped by the feedback I've gotten from the MSP community. It was funny when I first came over into the MSP space, having really, really drunk that Microsoft Kool-Aid, I learned a lot about what is and is not type of deal. Microsoft documentation and processes are often formed around enterprise environments and big IT teams and massive budgets and all those things. But I really saw an opportunity to say, you know, there's a better way for SMB, and SMB is missing out on a lot of things that this suite would do for them, whether it's laying in all these third-party tools or not understanding how group policy and setting objects works, or just not really having a clear defined strategy. So really being able to bring all of that consistently, and which I still do to this day. You'll see a product called Microsoft 365 Lighthouse, Microsoft Partner Center. Not only myself, but all the MSPs that we worked with over the years and continue to work with today, their writing is all over those walls. They have provided so much feedback and input to help improve and make those products what they are. And it's an ever-changing journey, right? So as new feedback comes in, it continues to go up, and those teams continue to act on that feedback to make sure that the tools Microsoft's delivering is not just great on a marketing poster, but also great in practice.
I've seen it. I've seen it in real time. I mean, one week you're in there and something's not quite right or the way it needs to be, and a week or two later, you got exactly what you need.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I got no doubt that we have played some type of role in that situation.
100%.
And it's really comforting to know that Microsoft is taking this feedback from us.
Yeah, it's not common that you I mean, of course, every business is a business, and Microsoft, of course, is a beast of a business in a good way in a lot of ways. And there are things that, necessarily might not align with how we run our own operations or how our business, but that's one of our core pillars here at My365 too, is really understanding how to learn from challenge and change. And we can't do everything the same always. We have to keep evolving our business practices as the market evolves. And I'm sure, Chris, you've seen all the change that the latest and greatest craze generative AI has brought to, and how we've really had to adjust the way we not only think about opportunities and think about IT management, but how we're actually holding bigger companies accountable like Microsoft, like Amazon, like Google, to really make sure that the solutions that they're engineering and delivering are giving value to our partners. So that's really one of our core philosophies here, is making sure that what's happening during the day is being passed on to the developers that are building these tools, and making sure that they're going to be a viable solution for long-term growth in just about any industry you work with.
All right, let's get an intro done. We have David Swenson here joining us today on the Cyber Brisket podcast. David Swenson serves as Chief Information Officer, CIO at Netlogic Computer Consulting, where he leads modern workplace strategy and secure cloud transformation using Microsoft 365, device management, and Azure services. Driven by a do more with less mindset, David has supported diverse business clients across industries and also helped nonprofit, local government, and K through 12 organizations implement scalable, modern IT solutions. He collaborates with managed service providers nationwide to improve scalability and consistency throughout the Netlogic My365 program, pairing an intuitive customer portal with interactive live meetings and regular content updates that help partners deliver better outcomes faster. David is also an active adopter of Copilot and generative AI, translating emerging capabilities into practical workflows and internal automation through AI-driven assistants and agents. Wow.
It's a mouthful,
you do a
right?
lot of stuff. My
Yeah,
gosh,
right.
I can't imagine what my business would look like. What would Engler IT look like without you guys? I can't really say, because you are really the cornerstone of our Microsoft offering. And so really appreciate the partnership, always a super wealth of knowledge. And I have 5 questions for you.
All right, let's do it.
On modern workplace strategy, given how quickly Microsoft 365 and Azure capabilities are evolving, what signals do you look for when deciding it's time for an organization to shift part of its modern workplace strategy?
It's a great question. And it's one that our partners have asked us a lot, like, what is the secret sauce? And every organization is going to be different, right? They're going to have their own niches, their own behaviors, and all those different things. But mainly, I focus on 3 signals that tend to emerge across every type of organization, regardless of industry or vertical or size or whatever it might be. The first one is friction. Friction is if a user or admins are constantly fighting a tool, creating workarounds, dealing with tribal knowledge, inconsistent behaviors. It's a sign that the environment is out of alignment with where Microsoft's roadmap has already gone. And by that, it's not just Microsoft's roadmap, but we've seen things like new authentication policies and new ways of signing into different services, new ways of managing devices. So it's really important to understand what is the friction that's being caused in the organization now. And a lot of that is listening to the key decision makers and also the users at those organizations to really let them explain what's not working right. And in the back of our minds, be thinking about, all right, how can we translate that into something more modern? The second I look for is emerging default patterns. And that is looking at things like Microsoft is quietly and continuously telling you what the future looks like through defaults. When you start to see settings in your various Microsoft portals shift from optional to on by default, like modern authentication or security defaults or data loss prevention baselines, that's a clear signal that it's time to sit down with your key decision makers and realign some strategy, or at least start having the conversation so that you're not caught off guard when those different types of settings and those compatibility options become mandatory. Because as we know, it goes from, hey, try this thing out, that's your optional setting, then it goes to default on, and then eventually, rather quickly, it's going to go to mandatory. And we've seen that most recently happen with things like modern multi-factor authentication and the deprecation of things like application passwords inside of Microsoft 365. A lot of our partners, yourself included, that didn't really hit us that hard because for the last 8 years, we've been working on that together. So all of our clients were already poised for those types of things, in large part due to the baselines and policies that we deploy. The third thing, and it's often overlooked too, is the operational overhead that I look for. So if an IT team is spending more time maintaining something than it's delivering value, for example, managing updates manually, patching scripts for various holes, care and feeding legacy identity, then modernization has already become a more efficient path. I don't chase every new feature. I watch for when the cost of shifting becomes higher than the cost of adopting what's now the norm.
Mm. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. So I was actually, while you were speaking, was remembering a conversation that I had with a prospect just earlier today. Now I'm not going to name any names, but I was talking with their internal IT person, and they have completely bent over backwards from an IT perspective, using the tools way outside their intended use case in order to accommodate some users that maybe are not willing to learn how to use the modern workplace.
Yep. Yep. It saves so much time and effort when you can get things standardized, which I'm sure we'll talk more about as we continue on here. But that's really the thing, is don't adopt something just to try and do it. But in summary, examine your friction patterns, examine the emerging defaults coming in an organization through your Microsoft partnership or admin centers, and really be thinking about that operational overhead that you just mentioned. How much time are we spending, or for lack of a better word, wasting, trying to chase those old processes when there's already a better way? And does it require a little adjustment? Yes, but what in business doesn't require adjustment and change if we want to keep growing, right?
Sure, if you want to remain relevant when your competitors are adopting this stuff and using it the right way and running lean and mean and efficient, and you're kind of like, if you're not doing the same thing, then you're going to be left in the dust.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so on supporting diverse organizations, you've worked with nonprofits, K through 12 organizations, government, and private businesses. What's one challenge that surprisingly appears across all sectors when they try to modernize IT?
Of course, there's a lot, right? But the universal one that I've seen come up is the real biggest universal challenge is inconsistent foundations. And what I mean by that is every sector, no matter the size or the mission, has accumulated years of exceptions to every rule. Legacy policies, and that's the one thing we can't touch, right? Oh, we can't do that because we have this process. We're going to maintain this server because we don't want to deal with it, right? But in reality, that server's slowing them down and causing so much operational overhead, back to one of the first points that we made. So when it's time to modernize, the technical work is usually pretty easy, or simple, I like to say. It's unwinding the years of drift that slows everything down. So whether you're a school district, a nonprofit, a SaaS startup, a manufacturer, et cetera, the pattern's identical. No two devices are configured the same is an often finding. Security policies vary by department or function. Not sure why, it's just what it's been done. Identity and access decisions way back when it was first set up were made on an ad hoc basis, not in a strategic future thought type of basis. And legacy processes are surviving purely because they work well enough. And why change it, right? Modernization really exposes these inconsistencies and often tends to break stuff too if it's not addressed, and some things just aren't compatible anymore. So success requires getting everyone onto the same standard baseline before you could take advantage of these new capabilities. So in reality, it's just that age old mantra of, well, we've always done it this way and we've never re-examined it and we've never changed it. How many things in your actual day-to-day life do you treat that way? Right? You're constantly changing, you're constantly improving, whether it's your style, your vacuum cleaner, your solar powered system on your roof, right? The paint colors and you got to change, you got to keep improving, you got to keep examining what's working and what's not in order to keep moving forward.
Yeah, that reminds me of reinventing the wheel situation. So, as we discussed earlier, Microsoft and a lot of these other organizations that are developing these tools for us are doing so based off of feedback that they're receiving from thousands of endpoints.
Mm,
So they've got partners and clients all over the world that are providing them with feedback about how the tools are impacting their operations, and they're developing these tools around best use cases.
yep.
And so there's a good chance that as someone is coming into a modern situation, or at least looking at or entertaining the idea of a modern situation, they're going to encounter a little bit of shock because they're going to see that the modern, I think you described it as the path or the roadmap that Microsoft
Yep.
has created these tools to operate
Hmm.
within, may be vastly different. It may actually dictate a slightly or vastly different operational workflow.
Hmm.
And so the folks that start to entertain these things, in my opinion, it's their first exposure to global consensus on how things ought to be done best and most efficiently.
Mm,
And it's really by entertaining it and thinking about it and integrating it into their workflow, they're gaining the knowledge of the entire population.
yeah, absolutely. And they're also gaining consistency. That's a huge piece, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in a bit. But think of, just one of the major changes in the last, we'll say 15 years now. I'm getting old, I'm sorry. I was younger when I started this. Um, think
I
of
had
one of the
hair.
big, right? Think of one of the big changes. And Chris, what this did to our industry as MSPs, co-authoring in a Word document, right? 15 years ago, that wasn't a thing, right? Nobody cared about that. Nobody even thought about that. Is everyone had a static copy? You would keep it on a USB drive, maybe even a floppy disk if you're old enough. For all the kids watching, that's what that little save icon is. It was your first storage medium. But just
Oh yeah,
introducing,
how did you get a save icon? That's yeah, whenever
yeah, right,
they
the
see a
save
disk in
icon.
the yeah.
I've done talks in different classrooms, especially vocational technical education, and no one actually knows what that symbol is. So it's always fun explaining those things. And then I put them in a little simulation where I'll install like Windows 95 on a virtual machine and make them use it at the day. And they're like, what is this? What is that? Um, Internet Explorer and Netscape, those were fun. But yeah, back to that co-authoring and file synchronization, like think 10, 15 years ago, maybe even shorter, nobody ever asked us, oh yeah, I'm working on this document on my computer, can I pick up where I left off on my phone? Like that wasn't a thing. But something as today, we treat that as a very simple expectation, but that required so much retooling, re-engineering, and rethinking, not only about how we're creating and saving and sharing our documents, but also the security implications behind it. And that's a great example that I bring up a lot with my customers and say, look, these things that you're wanting to do now, they weren't a thing when the thing you installed was relevant. So it's time to shift gears a little bit in order to make your technical hopes and dreams come true.
Thanks for that.
Mhm.
All right, so I've got another one here on the My 365 program.
Mm.
It blends technology, education, and service delivery. What insight or lesson from partners has most influenced how you've evolved the program?
Mm. Yep. So the biggest insight has been this essentially. MSPs, managed service providers, IT professionals, support personnel, they don't struggle with Microsoft because it's hard. They struggle because it's inconsistent. And not inconsistent by design, just inconsistent because, as we know in this space, Microsoft is a choose your own adventure type of animal, right? So it supports organizations of one user all the way up to 500,000 and beyond users. So it needs to be highly malleable, highly adaptable while still maintaining all of that. So when I first started the program, of course, coming from Microsoft, I didn't quite understand what that meant, but by people saying it's hard, because of course I was in these trainings and in these classes and in these workshops, and I'm saying, oh yeah, everybody does Intune, everybody does Azure AD, everybody knows these things. They don't. And Microsoft doesn't always do a great job of explaining it. So partners told me repeatedly over the years, every tenant behaves slightly different. Documentation doesn't match what we see in our portals or admin centers. And Microsoft support is unpredictable, right? So those three pillars of feedback really helped shape My365's core philosophy, our own B2B MSP partner program. And that really is, MSPs don't need more features. They need consistency, predictability, and confidence. So we built My365 around that. One, we have a shared baseline that behaves the same across every single tenant, whether you're in a healthcare system, a legal system, a government tenant in a sovereign cloud, or in a school system. It should be the same, as close as possible, with group exceptions and branding and all of that, but a shared baseline that delivers consistency across every tenant. And then education is a huge component of My365. It's not just about let's give you the settings and let you run wild. What really separates us from other Microsoft partners that MSPs may choose to partner with is we want to teach you the thing that we just did for you. We want you to understand it. We want you to be able to be that champion and grow with the product. So it's education that matches real world behavior, not marketing pages or marketing flyers, because we all know big tech companies, they love their marketing. If it was up to them, every single worker would be an AI bot at this point in time. Not quite ready for that, right? It's not there yet. And then on top of that, the third real point that we built into My365 is repeatable processes that eliminate guesswork. How do we know where our policies are controlled? Which conditional access is controlling that? Hey, I got a security alert or a signal here. Without the standardization and consistency of our baseline, everyone's tenant is named differently, every policy is different, every value is different. And we talked about operational overhead with legacy software, but you could just as quickly back yourself into a really expensive operational overhead problem if your setups are not consistent. So those three pillars, shared baseline, education that matches real world behavior, not marketing buzzwords, and repeatable process that eliminate guesswork. The program keeps evolving because partners keep reminding us that clarity and confidence matter more than complexity.
Sure, and also, since we're tooting your horn here, I will say that I've always appreciated how available you and your team are. So if I ever need anything, I can go in the Teams channel. You guys are holding meetings with the membership with us like twice a week, and we can always get in. And if we have a question, something comes up, because Lord knows, one day Microsoft comes out with something that changes that changes the interface somewhere, and now we don't know how to do something, and then we're kind of scrambling at that point, trying to figure out, well, what do we do, because now the world's different. So
right.
Yeah, so whenever Microsoft pulls the rug out from under us, you guys are always there to give us a soft fall. So I do appreciate
and that's our real commitment, and that's been the biggest, I think, sticking point for a lot of partners. The majority of partners that signed up with me back in 2018 are still with me, or they're still here with this program. And that has a lot to do with the nature of the beast, right? These things are going to keep evolving. These things are going to keep changing, which is a turnoff for some people, but it also, I don't know, for me, it's exciting. And for my team, it's also exciting. Now, there are challenges to that. I get it. But it's making sure that we stay on top of those things, because our commitment to our MSP partners is, one, availability. Yes, we got to be as available as possible, and it has to feel native. You should communicate with us using the same tools that you do every day. Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, all those different areas. So it's eating your own dog food type of stuff that we practice as well. I'll tell my joke. I don't know if now's a good time to tell it, and I'm sure the audience or some people have heard me say it at different shows before, but do you know why they call it Azure?
No.
Because as you're learning it, they're changing it. So that's where if we come up with something and we have that answer for you, chances are we studied it 6 months ago, kind of tucked it away in the back of our mind, and then all of a sudden Microsoft chooses to release it. So we want to be on top of everything possible. Are we an expert at everything? No. Do we have partners that we leverage when something is out of the Microsoft 365 scope? Yes. We want to make sure that if we can't get you the answer, we're able to get you in front of somebody that absolutely does.
Great. I'd like to switch gears here real quick. Let's talk about AI a little bit. As an early adopter of Copilot and AI assistance, what's one practical workflow or automation you implemented internally that created an unexpectedly big impact?
Well, actually, I think this harkens back to what we were just saying about change management. In the past, before Copilot, all of that was done manually, right? So we essentially automated all of our policy change documentation. You know that we come out with 2 baselines a year to keep up with Microsoft changes, all those different things. And as we refine our Intune and security baselines that get deployed to our tenants, we used to manually document every single version, every single change, and the impact analysis report. And it was, because I was the one doing it for a long time and still am, it was tedious and it was error prone, right? You're going to stop something, you're going to come back to it. It took hours and hours, if not days and days, just to complete one document effectively with all the hundreds of different configurations that get deployed to tenancies. So now we're able to leverage Copilot to instantly compare baseline versions, identify changes across configuration profiles, draft change logs automatically, and generate customer-facing what to expect and user guide summaries. So it really, the adoption and the infusion, or I would say early adoption that we did of Copilot and AI, is it turned multi-hour, multi-day processes into minutes. But the real world impact was actually cultural, not technical. It created a space for our team to focus on improving the baseline instead of documenting it. So the quality of our work went up because the administrative overhead plummeted. And that's really what we like to see as we deploy Copilot and AI, not only for our MSP partners, but for their customers too. If someone's pitching me an idea for an agent, I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, that's awesome, just because I want to sell you a service. I'm going to say, well, maybe an agent's a little overkill in this case, or no, an agent is perfect for this case. Let's show you what can be done. But yeah, ultimately, it really took us from constantly focusing on documentation, constantly focusing on change management to be able to have more human-like conversations like we're doing right now.
Great. So on doing more with less, you emphasize, and this really speaks to one of Engler IT's core values, because we believe in keeping things simple too. We oftentimes use a quote from Steve Jobs to demonstrate that to our prospects and our clients. But the question is, you emphasized this do more with less philosophy. So, well, where do you think organizations most underestimate the power of simplification in their IT strategy?
So it's funny, when I talk about simplifying IT, a lot of folks, they misunderstand that, and they think it's about removing choice, removing user choice, right? Locking things down, creating policies and all those things. But most organizations underestimate the power of fewer choices. Not fewer capabilities, fewer variations on a theme. So here's the truth. Every deviation in a policy, permission, device configuration, application distribution, it doubles, if not triples, the burden of the IT support team. Simplification is not just about restrictions. It's about reducing drift, eliminating exceptions, and standardizing the 95% so that the 5% can be handled with intention. Making the default path or making the default path too secure that much easier and that much simpler. So when we help organizations simplify, whether through the My365 baseline or modernizing their identity strategy, they almost always say the same thing after we're done. We didn't realize how much time we were wasting until it was gone. And that's really been the big thing here is, so don't underestimate the power of simplification. Don't underestimate the power of having consistent deployment policies. And you've used our baseline for years now. One of the big things that we try and do is make sure that end users have that appropriate level of choice. Let's set our taskbar, let's change our icons, let's customize our desktop, let's make it feel like ours. But the underlying functionality of your device or of your account should work according to an organizational standard. And that is ultimately the best part of doing more with less, because the less policies, configurations, and things you have to manage, the less operational overhead, circling back to our first point, the less operational overhead you're going to have to deal with, and the less technical debt you're going to carry forward.
Yeah, the concept reminds me of a story that I heard years and years and years ago when a business coach was teaching me about lean manufacturing or something along those lines, where he was talking about some car manufacturers that went over to Japan to check out their assembly line. And the car manufacturers had a station at the end after they put the doors on the car. So they'd be somewhere, they put the doors on the car, and then there'd be a station where guys had a bunch of mallets to make sure that the doors would fit the car properly. And then so they go over to Japan, and they're looking for that station, and they're asking the Japanese guys where's the station where with the guys with the mallets that bang the doors into place to make sure they fit. And the guy comes back saying something along the lines of, we make the doors so that they fit.
Right. Build it to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah. So it actually reminds me of like a Zen idea where it's like, okay, well, I've considered all of the options and all the variables in the situation, and it seems like the thing that's going to serve me the most is to take this course of action versus just kind of like plowing ahead and fixing things as you go, which sometimes can create more work than maybe you might be interested in.
Absolutely. Yep. Reduce that overhead in every policy baseline. It's that standardize the 95% so the 5% can be handled intentionally. That's the whole philosophy of the baseline, and doing more with less.
And to speak to what you said about the support team, because if a client ever does need support, they're going to want quick, easy, fast support. And if you don't have a standardized environment that the technicians are familiar with, if you got something that's completely one-off and customized and doesn't follow necessarily any best practices, just to accommodate a specialized workflow that you think you need instead of actually exposing yourself to what might be better, then when the time comes when things break down and they do have to reach out to support, it's going to take a lot longer for that technician to figure out what's going on. So they have to orient themselves in the tent to figure out, okay, what's going on? Where am I? What do all these labels mean? And oftentimes it's going to have to get escalated once or twice before somebody can figure something out. Versus when we're talking about doing standardization, we've got technicians that are already familiar with these environments. We have this underlying foundation that you have so gracefully provided us with. And it allows us to really operate and help people out quicker so that if by chance things do break down, because the whole idea is that when we do these things, they're less likely to do that, number one. But then number two, if they ever do, it's going to be a much faster resolution.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Keeping it clean, keeping it consistent. And it's that age-old thing that you'd hear at all the different, MSP groups is you're building for economies of scale. You want to be able to continue to scale your solution. The best way to scale is to do more with less. The best way to do more with less is to have consistency across your entire deployment mechanism.
I totally agree. And that was actually my last question. So I think we did it. I'm really happy working with you guys. It's been going on for years, and I look forward to working with you still years to come.
Likewise, likewise. And I hope I'll see you at some shows this year too. We'll be at Channel Pros in the spring and we'll be down at Seven Figures in the fall. So if we catch you there, looking forward to it.
Thanks, David. Take care, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Cyber Brisket Podcast, what's hot in IT and how to keep your business from getting cooked.